I've been diagnosed for Alzheimer.
I'm too old for this. That's what Danny Glover said. And look, he know the line. You've heard it 1,000 times. But when he said it this time, he wasn't talking about some scripted movie scene with Mel Gibson. He wasn't playing a character. He was sitting in his own home, in his own kitchen, surrounded by family, and he was talking about something that's quietly been stealing him from the world. Something they didn't want you to know about. Something they buried behind honorary Oscars and carefully staged interviews and that warm, grandfatherly smile they've been selling you for years. And here's the thing, though. You already knew something was off. You saw the interviews. You saw the way his eyes would drift, the pauses that got just a little too long, the way his answers started to feel like they were coming from somewhere far away. You felt it, didn't you? You know, just like I know when something's being covered up, Hollywood's really good at that. They're experts at it, actually. They'll take a legend, a real icon, someone who's given everything to the art and the culture, and they'll wrap him in this warm blanket of praise and awards and honorary, this and legacy, that. And all the while, they're quietly pushing him out of the way. They're making sure the real story never sees the light of day. But here's the thing, Danny Glover isn't staying quiet anymore. And the reason for that, well, you'll see. He invited cameras into his home, his actual home, not some studio backlot, not some curated press junket, his kitchen, with his family around him. And he looked straight into the lens and said the words they've been trying to stop him from saying for years. I've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Now stop right there. Let that sit for a second. Because this isn't just any celebrity diagnosis story. This isn't some tabloid headline you scroll past while you're waiting for your coffee. This is a man who has nearly 200 film and television roles to his name. 200. A man who's been in the limelight for almost 40 years. A man who's won an Oscar, an honorary one, sure, but still an Oscar. And at 79 years old, he's facing something that Hollywood has spent decades keeping quiet about. And you want to know what's really sick about this? The timeline. They gave him that honorary Oscar in 2022, not long after he was diagnosed. And you have to ask yourself, don't you? Was that their way of saying goodbye? Was that their way of putting a bow on his career so they could quietly slide him into the shadows? Make sure nobody noticed when he started to slip away. Because let's be honest here, Hollywood doesn't like aging. They don't like sickness. They don't like anything that reminds the audience that their gods are mortal. And Alzheimer's. That's the one they really fear. That's the one that scares them more than anything else. Because Alzheimer's doesn't just take your body. It takes who you are. It robs you of your memories, your essence, everything that made you Danny Glover in the first place. And when that happens, you're not useful to them anymore. You're not marketable. You can't sell tickets. You can't promote the franchise. You're just gone. Slowly, publicly, painfully gone. And they wanted to hide that from you. They wanted you to remember him as Roger Murtaugh, tough and sharp, delivering those iconic lines with that perfect blend of exhaustion and authority. They wanted you to remember him as the activist, the socially conscious artist, the man who marched and spoke and used his platform for change. They didn't want you to see him struggling to find words. They didn't want you to see the fear in his eyes when he thinks about what's coming. But here's where it gets really dark. And I need you to stay with me here, because this is the part nobody talks about. Alzheimer's hits Black men at double the national average. You heard me right. Double. And they don't know exactly why, and they don't really seem to be in a hurry to find out either. And you tell me right now, if that's not a story they're trying to keep buried, if that's not something that should be shouted from every rooftop, a disease that's taking out our icons, our fathers, our grandfathers at a rate that's twice as high as everyone else. And what are they doing about it? What are the media outlets doing? What are the celebrities doing? What are the institutions doing? They're giving him an honorary Oscar and hoping you don't ask questions. That's what they're doing. Now, I want to tell you something that surprised me. It surprised me a lot, actually, because I went into this thinking I knew Danny Glover. You know, we all thought we knew him. The Lethal Weapon guy, the Predator guy, the guy who was always a little political, a little outspoken, a little too willing to say the things that made the establishment uncomfortable. And I loved him for that. I loved that he wasn't afraid. But what I didn't know, what they never told us, is that this man started acting because of Amiri Baraka. Amiri Baraka, the revolutionary playwright, the poet of the Black Arts movement. He walked into a room at San Francisco State and he pulled Danny Glover onto a stage. And Glover had never been on a stage before. Never. He was just a young man from San Francisco who had no idea he was about to become one of the most recognizable faces in cinema. And you know what that makes me think? That makes me think about the people who are pulling the strings now. The people who are trying to control the narrative. The people who want us to see certain things and not see others. Because if Danny Glover can be discovered by Amiri Baraka, if he can come from that world of revolution and social justice and speaking truth to power, then you know what? He's always been a threat to them. He's always been someone they wanted to control, always been someone they wanted to keep on a leash. And I think I really think that's why they've been so careful with his narrative. That's why they waited so long to let him tell his story. That's why they tried to soften it, to make it palatable, to make it about removing the stigma and helping others and all that beautiful, noble stuff that makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. But you know what I think? I think they're terrified of what he's going to say next, because Danny Glover isn't the kind of man who goes quietly. And look at who's around him. Look at who they showed us in that kitchen. His family, his support system, the people who love him. And they're all there, right there, because Alzheimer's isn't just a disease. It's not just something that happens to one person. It's a family thing. You understand that, don't you? You know what I'm saying? When one person starts to fade, the whole family has to hold them together. The whole family has to remember for them. The whole family has to be strong when the one who was always the strongest starts to slip. And I'm going to be honest with you for a second. Actually, wait. I need to pause here, because something about this story really got to me. And I don't usually get personal. That's not my thing. But watching him sit there, watching him talk about his legacy, watching him say he wants to talk to young people about responsibility, watching him still, even now, even with this disease eating away at him, still wanting to contribute, still wanting to teach, still wanting to learn. It just hit me in a way I didn't expect. Because you see, Alzheimer's doesn't just take away what you had. It takes away what you could have been. And Danny Glover still had so much to give. You heard him. He said he's got lots to learn, even at 79. Even with this diagnosis, he's still looking without fear. That's what he said. The hope of glory and good I look without fear ahead. And you can't tell me? You absolutely cannot tell me that the people in Hollywood don't know what they're doing when they try to silence that. They know exactly what they're doing. And that's where the outrage has to kick in. Because this isn't just about Danny Glover. It's about all of them. The ones they've been covering up for decades. The ones they've been pushing into the shadows. The ones who get a nice little ceremony, a gold statue, a few kind words, and then they're gone. They're moved out of the way. They're replaced by younger, prettier, less politically dangerous versions. And nobody says a word. Nobody asks why. Nobody questions the narrative. But you're asking now, aren't you? That's why you're here. That's why you clicked on this video. Because you knew. You knew something wasn't right. You knew there was more to the story than what the mainstream media was feeding you. And you were right. You were absolutely right. Because here's the thing. Danny Glover didn't have to tell us. He didn't have to invite cameras into his home. He didn't have to sit there and answer questions about his memory, about his fears, about what it's like to know that the essence of who you are is fading away. He could have stayed silent. He could have let Hollywood wrap him in that warm, protective blanket and slowly, quietly, disappear into the retirement home of forgotten legends. But he didn't. He chose to speak. He chose to tell the truth. And I know you're going to hear people say he's brave. And he is. He is brave. But let's not pretend that's the whole story, because bravery isn't just talking about your diagnosis. Bravery is talking about it when they told you not to. Bravery is talking about it when your handlers, your agents, your PR team, the whole machinery of Hollywood is telling you to keep your mouth shut. Bravery is knowing that the disease is going to take your memories anyway, and choosing to give those memories away freely before they're gone. And that's what he did. He gave them to us. He sat there in his kitchen with his beautiful family, and he gave us the truth. And what did we give him? What did we give him? A few headlines, a few minutes of attention. And then the algorithm moved on to the next story. But not here, not this time. Because this time, we're going to talk about what they don't want you to know. And they don't want you to know that Danny Glover's story is connected to a much bigger pattern. A pattern of silencing, of covering up, of pushing aside anyone who challenges the narrative. And I really think, that if you look closely at the history of Hollywood, at the history of the entertainment industry, you'll see a long, long list of people who were quietly removed when they became too inconvenient. And I don't know about you, but I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the way they treat our icons. I'm tired of the way they think we're too stupid to notice when someone's being pushed out. I'm tired of the way they use words like stigma and awareness and support when what they really mean is, we don't want you to talk about this in public because it makes us look bad. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because Danny Glover, even with everything he's going through, even as the disease continues to progress, he's still working. He's still attending events. He's still engaging with his community. He's still trying to make a difference. And you have to ask yourself, don't you, how many other legends out there are doing the same thing? How many other people are quietly fighting their own battles while the media looks the other way? How many other stories are being buried because they don't fit the narrative? This is the breadcrumb. This is what they don't want you to see. Because once you see the pattern, once you see how they handle people like Danny Glover, you can't unsee it. And that's the point. That's always been the point. They want us to see each story as isolated, as separate, as just a sad celebrity thing that happens sometimes. But it's not. It's a pattern. It's a system. It's a way of controlling the narrative and making sure that the people who speak truth to power are slowly, quietly rendered irrelevant. Now, I know some people are going to watch this and say I'm being dramatic. And that's fine. That's fine. But you know what? You know what I think? I think you've already been thinking this for a long time. I think you've already noticed the way certain stories just disappear. I think you've already seen the way certain people are celebrated one day and forgotten the next. I think you've already felt in your gut that something is deeply wrong with the way Hollywood treats its icons. And that's what this is about. It's about trusting your gut. It's about trusting what you already know. It's about not letting them gaslight you into thinking everything is fine when clearly, it's not. Because Danny Glover gave us a gift. He gave us the truth. He gave us a moment of genuine, unfiltered honesty in a world that is built on lies. And I'm not going to let that moment go to waste. Look, I'm going to be honest with you again. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm just someone who pays attention. Someone who notices things. And what I've noticed is that the mainstream media loves to talk about Alzheimer's when it's a famous person who fits their narrative. But when it's someone like Danny Glover, someone who's been outspoken, someone who's been critical of the system, someone who's made people uncomfortable, they'd rather give him an award and hope he goes away. And he's not going away, he's not. He's sitting there in his kitchen with his family, and he's looking at his legacy, and he's telling us that he wants to talk to young people. He wants to teach, he wants to learn, he wants to keep fighting, even now. Even as the disease is slowing his movements, slowing his speech, slowing his memories, he's still fighting. And that's the real story, isn't it? That's the story they don't want you to know. It's not that he's weak. It's that he's strong, unbelievably strong. And they hate that. They hate that they can't control him. They hate that he won't just sit down and be quiet. They hate that he's still looking forward, still looking without fear, still refusing to be silenced. So here's my question for you. And I want you to really think about this. I want you to sit with it. I want you to let it burn in your chest. If Danny Glover at 79 years old, with a fatal neurodegenerative disease slowly stealing his identity, can still look ahead without fear, then what's our excuse? What's our excuse for staying silent? What's our excuse for looking the other way? What's our excuse for letting them get away with this over and over and over again? You know the answer. You already know it. You know, just like I know that the system is broken, that the institutions are corrupted, that the people in power will do anything to maintain that power. And the only thing that stops them, the only thing that makes a difference, is when we refuse to look away. When we refuse to let them control the narrative. When we refuse to forget the people they want us to forget. Danny Glover isn't just a Hollywood icon. He's a symbol. A symbol of everything they want to silence. A symbol of everything they want to bury. A symbol of everything that's still good, still righteous, still fighting. Even as the world tries to tear him down. And that's the secret. That's the secret they didn't want you to know. Not that he's sick, that he's still fighting, that he's still here, that he's still refusing to go quietly. So are we.